Hello everybody. In today's lecture I want to show you how to handle events in a separate object from the one in which it was created. Or specifically, let's say you have a window, all right, and you have a button in that window. You know, how can you actually respond to that button click event, you know, from a completely, different object, you know, from that window. All right, so let's go ahead and write some code here. I'm going to be using Notepad++ as my text editor. I'm going to create two classes. One is going to be a class called SimpleForm. It's going to have a button. It's not going to do anything special. You click on it. It's going to have another class called MainApp. You have to have a main application, right? A main method to run your program. So I'm going to have another class called MainApp. It's going to have the event handler method in that class. And when I click on the button, the method in the MainApp class will respond to that button click. Okay, so let's get started. So, two classes to this program. So I'm going to start off with my using directives. Using system. Let me save this file first. I got a form, I should say a folder called separate object events. So I'm going to call this SimpleForm. Save it as a C# source file. Excuse me, a little froggy today. All right. So using system.windows.forms, and using drawing. I'm not actually going to probably use anything in that drawing namespace, but I like to put it in there anyway, just in case I do. Okie dokie. Public class SimpleForm extends form, and just add a couple spaces there. First thing I'm going to do, I'm going to create a private field of type button, and the name of the field is going to be underscore button1, just like that. And I might come down a space there. All right, then I'm going to create a constructor. Remember, constructor has the same name as the class, but doesn't have a return type. Okay, and this constructor is going to take an argument to a MainApp class. Okay. And all this constructor is going to do is call a method called initializeComponent. And pass in that reference MA to it. So next we're going to come down here and put in, now this can be private. Return void, initialize component. And I'm just going to complete it there. MainApp MA. All right. So in this method, all we need to do is we need to instantiate the button. So button1 equals new button, like that. Give it some text. Dot text equals, just put click me, exclamation point. Now I'm going to register the event handler for the click event. So button1 dot click, okay, plus equals. Now the click event handler method is going to be in the MainApp class, so it's going to be MA. That's a reference to the MainApp. I'm going to call it button1 click handler, just like that. That's the name of a method, and we have not written that method yet because it's going to be in another class. Okay, but we can go ahead and continue with this. Now, okay, I got my button created, so I'm going to add it to the window. So your form has controls property. This dot controls and a method called add, right? Add, and then just simply add the button. Nothing fancy here. It's just going to go in the upper left-hand corner because I'm not setting any properties on it, like the upper left, not the location. I'm not setting the location property. So it's just going to go in the upper left-hand corner. Okay, next, then I'm going to set the text on the window. This sets the title bar text. Equals simple form. Just like that. Nothing special. And that pretty much does it for the simple form class. Now, before we can compile this, we got to create the other class. So we're going to say new. File save as, and call it main app. Main app.cs. All right, so using system, and we're going to need the system windows.forms namespace in here as well. Okay, so I'm going to create a private field. So what I'm going to do is, I got this main app class because it's going to have the main method. This is where I'm going to run my program from. And I'm going to have a private field called, of type form to keep a reference to the form. Okay. And the constructor is going to set that field. So when I create an instance of main app. And then I'm going to have a event handler method. Okay. I got to go back in here and correct that. Nope. So let me see here. I got to go projects. I misnamed that thing. All right. This is what happens when you program live. Okay. I used a comma, right? App.cs. That's better. Okay. So file, open. Let's go get the right one. All right. Okay, now we're in a CS file. So using system, using windows.forms. All right, and that's good enough. Public class main app. And it doesn't extend anything. So give it a couple lines there. So private, and I can just say form. It's form. Okay. And public, I'm working on the constructor now. Public, main app, and don't need any arguments to the main app constructor. And I'm going to instantiate the form, its form, equals new simple form. This, because the simple form needs a reference to the main app. Okay, does that make sense? So I'm going to create an instance of simple form. And I'm going to pass in a reference to this object that I'm in. I'm in the main app class, so I can think of myself. I project myself, my mindset into I'm in this object. So this, I'm going to pass a reference to this object, to that constructor. If we go back to the simple form, we see that it's expecting a reference to a main app object, right? So for the curious out there who are looking at this code and saying, wait, now we got a dependency. Yes, you're right? We can't compile one of these without compiling both of them together. But there are ways, and in future videos I'll show you how to do it, how to break those dependencies by using interfaces, okay? But for now, we've got this dependency, but I'm just trying to demonstrate this separate object handling of events concept in this video. So marching right along. Now I'm going to create the event handler method. Public void And a button has an event, a delegate type of event handler, so it has to have a signature. The event handler method has to have a unique signature of object and event args, right? So I'll show you what that means. So the name of the method I've decided on is button1 click handler, because that's the name of the method I used over here, right? Button1 click handler. So this expects this main app reference to have a method named button1 click handler, right? So we go back to the main app method and we're creating this method. And it's a event handler method, so it has to have object and event args E. Now, object is in the system namespace, right? Well, actually, this built-in type is in C#, right? It's a alias. If you watched one of my earlier videos on the common type system, this alias is actually the same thing as system.object, right? So. And then event args is also in the system namespace. It's just very common event args structure. Okay. Now, okay, so what I'm going to do here is when I click the button, what am I going to do? Well, let's just print out the fact to the console that we click the button. So I'm going to cast, let's see, console. I'll start off with a console.writeLine. Console.writeLine. Okay. Now I'm going to cast button. Okay. Sender. Right. Dot text. Okay. So my object coming in is a button. I know it's a button, so I'm going to cast it to a button. And then I'm going to append it to, I'm going to append the words button clicked, just like that. So whatever the name of that button that we set, it's going to say, you know, that text plus button clicked. And let's finish this method off here, like that. Okay, now let's come down. Now we'll work on the main method, public static void main. Don't need any arguments in the main method. So what I'm going to do is I need to create an instance of the main app and just call it MA equals new main app. Just like that. And then I'm going to say application dot run, because I need to provide a window for this, or a form. So MA dot underscore its form. So when you're in a static the static method, right, you have access to the class's private fields. So I'm just going to access that field just like that. Okay, so just a quick review before we compile this thing. I didn't use a system.drawing. I could take it out. I don't need to keep it in there. All right, so using system.windows.forms. I'm in the simple form class. So simple form, right? Class simple form extends form, right? And it has a private field of type button called underscore button1. Then I have a constructor, takes a reference to a main app as a parameter, as an argument to this constructor, and it calls initialize component, okay, passing in the reference. Okay, now I named all these things the same, right? So there's no conflict because this parameter is local to this method, right? And then I come down here and I declare another, you know, I'm redeclaring it down here. I'm not redeclaring this one. I'm just declaring a main app parameter for this initialize component method. And then in here I'm using the same name, right? There's no conflicts because these are all local. This instance is local to that method, and this one's local. That's called local scoping. Okay, nothing magical going on there. And then I create an instance of the button in the initialize component method. I set the text to click me. I I then add a button handler or an event handler to the click event. So plus equals is our operator that we use. MA is our reference. And I'm saying use the button one click handler method. So we'll find that in the main app class. And there it is, public void button one click handler. The signature for an event handler delegate method is, it can be any name. It just has to have two arguments. The first one's object, the second one's event args. And then I'm just going to print out the text, right? So clean that up a little bit. Now let's compile it. So we bring up our command line. Okay, command prompt. And I'm going to change directories to the directory that I'm working in, like that. I'm going to close this window. Okay, so we can compile. See if I made any mistakes here. Star.cs. I'm compiling both of those files together. Okay, so it says, yeah, made a mistake, right? I always end up making some kind of flub, so it's capital text. I'm over here in this class right here. So capital T, right? It's a capital text property. Let's compile that again. Whoa, made the window too big. All right. You know, those types of errors, right? Those typos that you make when you're first starting out in programming, those are the ones that are going to kill you. You're going to like, well, I don't understand what's wrong. So you have to just be aware that, you know, when you're programming and you're learning this stuff, there's no like, I think I'm going to use capitals today and lowercase tomorrow, right? No, it's what if it's a capital letter, right? That's what it is. You're going to get an error because everything is case sensitive, right? So you have to be on your toes. And you get past that, the longer you do this stuff, right, the better you get at it. So let's run it. So I'm going to do a directory, list the directory. So okay, main app. Let's run this thing. So look for the output right down here. You should see my halo. So I'm going to type in simple form. Oh, I'm sorry, that's the wrong thing. So got to run main app. Having a hard time finding the keys. Main app. All right, let's run main app. So we bring it over. It's outside of my broadcast window there. Okay, so here's my form. And there's the button. I'm going to click on the button. And we got click me, button click, right? Click me, button clicked. All right, so that's how you handle events in a different object. So just to review, I've got a simple form here with a button. I'm clicking on it. But the form is not handling the button click. It's this main app class that's handling the button click. This is where the event handler is located. If we go back to simple form, I have a button. I've got my constructor, which passes in a reference to a main app. I call the initialize component method. Inside the initialize component method, I pass the reference, right? MA. I create the button. I set the text on the button. And then I assign the event handler to the button click event. Next thing I do is I add the button to the window. And since I'm not setting the location, it just goes in the upper left-hand corner. Let's take a look at that while we got this up here. It flows right up here. Right? If I set the location, then I can, put it anywhere on the window I want. Then I set the title bar of the window. Let's take a look at that. So there's simple form for the title bar right there, right? All right. Okay, so the next video after this, I dive deeper into the C# event handling process. And we may think of events mostly as happening inside of GUI components, right? Like the button click, right? Okay. And the main app. Well, here I'm handling the event in the main app class, right? But you can create your own components that generate events, right? And then handle those in any object that you wish. So it's not just GUI components. And that's what the next video talks about. Okay. Well, Thank you for joining me today, and happy programming.